How can physical assets compete in a world that's rapidly becoming digitized? And how will the investor of the future be buying gold? Joining us today is Michael Albanese. He's the CEO of Tradewind Markets, an NYC firm looking to build a single global platform to digitize precious metals. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danielle.
I'm excited to learn more about this product today. Want to start with the basics,
Sure.
Because we see a lot of cryptocurrencies backed by, either gold or silver or other metals, but this is not a cryptocurrency.
Exactly right. This is not a cryptocurrency. I'll start by saying there are a lot of creative companies doing a lot of exciting things in the precious metal space, including gold. But Tradewind brings a little bit of a different flavor to the table. So first of all, we are a financial technology company using various types of technology, including blockchain, in order to make it more secure, easier and more cost-effective to own precious metals like gold and silver. When you buy through our platform, you're actually buying the physical gold. So importantly, you're not buying a token. If you are, for example, a retail investor that's making a purchase, you can rest assured knowing that the gold that you buy is physically located in a sovereign location, very secure. It's at the Canadian Mint in Canada. Yep. And more importantly, the records that we keep, so we maintain ownership records digitally on the blockchain. That's where the blockchain comes in our program. It's not the crypto, it's the ledger. And the exciting thing about the ownership ledger is the government of Canada recognizes our ledger as a good title to the metal that you own. And you might be wondering, why is that so important? So who cares if you have a good title? Well, it's extremely important if you're a retail investor that's interested in making sure that you can get your hands on your gold when you actually want to get your hands on your gold. That's clearly yours. Good title, and you can take possession if and when you want.
And it's different than an ETF because, again, you could take
possession. Exactly right. So the differences from ETFs, there are actually a few. So ETFs, again, they serve a very good purpose in the market. We are not trying to unseat the ETF by any stretch of the imagination, but we found over time that investing in the actual physical gold has some advantages to certain segments of the market. So number one, the price point is a lot more cost effective when it comes to physical gold, digitally traded. Number two, if you do want to take possession of your gold, with a typical ETF you can't. With certain ETFs you can, but if you do, you need to rely on a lot of players, intermediaries between you and your gold in order to okay the release of that gold to you. With our platform, the ownership records are transparent. The Canadian Mint will recognize our records as title, and you'll be able to seamlessly take possession.
Who are you finding is the audience for this? Is it a younger consumer than the person who normally, traditionally buys physical gold?
Right. It's a couple of things. So again, we distribute through a network of wholesalers and broker-dealers, but what we found is that there are a couple of segments that are taking up this investment. So number one, first-time investors in gold that are used to an online brokerage experience when it comes to their equity investments. Right? So I started my career 20 some odd years ago in online equities brokerage, and I can tell you it's a shame that if you want to purchase gold today, it's a really clunky experience. You can't just go to one interface and buy and feel comfortable that you've got title. So it's certainly appealing to a group that is comfortable investing online in equities and bonds, but is just starting to dip their toe into the gold space. The second group, and this is where it gets, in my mind, even more exciting than the retail segment, is institutions. So you have a lot of institutions today that invest in alternative assets, precious metals being one. But I come from, my background is in banking and capital markets and securities markets. And when I got to Tradewind, I found it fascinating that gold doesn't turn over very much in institutional portfolios. So if this had been the equity or bond markets, institutional investors, they invest in equities and bonds, but those assets are quite mobile. Okay, there's a lot of lending, there's a lot of borrowing that goes on during the day and overnight and over the course of 10 to 20 days. In the gold markets, gold tends to be static in institutional portfolios. So the other big appeal to physical gold represented on a ledger like ours is that there's a lot you can do with that gold once it is represented on a ledger. You can lend it for a return and start to create some income stream on the gold. So the second segment is institutions, and I think it's quite exciting that we're trying to help institutions create a bit of a return on an asset that doesn't traditionally have it.
So that's interesting because, especially this year, we've seen hesitation from institutions entering the gold market. So this is a product that makes it more appealing?
I think it does. Okay. So what we hear is that it could be game-changing to create an income stream on metals like gold. That's number one. Number two, you do have a bunch of institutions that are already investing in alternative assets alongside securities and stocks and bonds. And a subset of that group happen to be ESG funds. So funds that are conscious about how they're investing. They want to invest responsibly. And those institutions have done a great job with ESG principles when it comes to their stocks and bond investing. But they've just started to scratch the surface when it comes to defining what does it mean to apply ESG principles to gold. And in my mind, there are great people in the gold industry. It's a fantastic industry. There's no reason why people in the gold industry can't set the standard about what it means to invest according to ESG principles when it comes to the gold market.
It's really interesting because a lot of the feedback we get, and I've brought this up in past interviews, is that Wall Street, living in New York, is not a big fan of gold. Do you feel this makes it more mainstream?
It's a double-edged sword when something gets mainstream, right? You would want it to get mainstream enough where it's effective but not overdone. But I do think without question, it gets an audience that's familiar with equity and bond markets and warms them up to gold.
You said earlier that it's not necessarily you want to steal a thunder from, gold ETFs or physical gold. But if you had to say you want to be a disruptor, what would you want to accomplish?
Sure. I would want probably two or three things at least. Number one, allowing metal to be used in collateralization and financing transactions more freely than it is today. What do I mean? Look at repo markets, right? Repo markets operate, depending on what side of the camp you are, either very effectively or not effectively at all, somewhere in between. There's no reason in my mind why gold can't be a very acceptable asset class when it comes to repos. So number one, adoption as good collateral. That would be first.
And do you feel North American market is there yet, or is there still a lot of education that needs to take place? A lot of comments I'll get is that in Asia, they get gold, right? Obviously, there's a huge cultural affinity there. So do you think North America is slowly building up to that, or is there a long road ahead?
I think it depends on the segment, right? So if we're talking about the retail segment, I think the road is long and steep when it comes to North America, right? When it comes to an institutional audience that, again, is looking to either raise financing or deploy gold or silver as asset classes, the road is less steep, right? And I say it's less steep because I know there are institutions out there that value the asset. There are institutions that have the asset in their portfolio and would love nothing more than to raise some funds against it, right? The key when you raise funds against an asset like gold is making sure you've got good title, making sure you know where it's located, making sure it meets the standards that you're buying it for, whether it's ESG or conflict-free or something like that. And four, knowing that you can get your hands on it when you need to, meaning at the moment of financial crisis or the morning after a financial crisis. Those four things should sound familiar because they're elements of our program.
So what is the turnaround time? So if I did want to get my physical gold, how long would that process take?
Typically what you would do, so if you're an individual and you've purchased through our program and you want to redeem or take possession of your gold, you would make a request to your broker-dealer. Your broker-dealer would notify the Canadian Mint, and that could take a couple of days, give or take.
I mentioned at the beginning, this is not at all like a crypto backed by the metal. Do you see that as a competitor, though, to this product?
It's two things. It's a potential competitor, but it's also a potential user of our platform. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So there are different flavors, as I said earlier, of gold investing. One happens to be tokenization, or I'll call it stablecoin, crypto backed by gold. Wouldn't it be interesting if we can learn a lesson from the past? There have been a lot of attempts to create gold-backed stablecoins. Some have failed. In fact, many even failed to take off. And if you look at why, I would postulate that it's because of a few reasons. Number one, it wasn't clear that you can get your hands on the gold when you wanted to. It wasn't clear that the gold was actually in a location that was auditable, right? Wouldn't it be interesting if a company like Tradewind can help enable responsible stablecoin issuance so that people who buy stablecoins can have it backed by gold that they're comfortable with, they know where it's located, and might meet the criteria they're looking to lend against?
It's definitely really interesting. And how do you deal, how does the volatility of the gold price affect business? Obviously, we had a fantastic summer.
Yeah.
Things have kind of come to a head right now, but hopefully 2020 will pick up. But does that impact your business?
I would say, I wish I could say that regardless of what gold prices do, companies like ours would just keep selling a lot of product. I think the fact of the matter is when it comes to a retail individual, I do think the gold price does matter. I think when we saw the uptick a couple of months ago in the price of gold, we did see a sharp increase in activity. But I do think if you look at those other cases that I mentioned, where you're talking about institutions that already have the gold and are looking to deploy it as a collateral asset, I do think that activity is much less dependent on the price of gold.
Interesting. And any feelings as to where gold could be headed in 2020? I know you're not a forecaster, Michael.
No, now you're getting into shaky ground and asking me to take a future view on things. So, what I would say, I won't take a position on where I think it's going, but I would tell you individually where I look when I look at these things. So I think we're just about 30 minutes from the Fed's announcement of the minutes, right? And I think the judgment there was that most of the Fed...
No rate cuts for now.
No rate cuts for now,
right.
exactly. Not a surprise to many people. I think a lot will depend, in my mind, on what goes on with the dollar. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot will depend, and this relates back to our product a bit. You do see over the past 6 months or so, sovereign institutions, right, accumulating large amounts of gold. And I do, in the back of my mind, wonder what that means to prices 12 months from now. And I also wonder a little bit about what it means when it comes to digitization. Mm-hmm. So you have these sovereigns purchasing gold. Wouldn't it again be interesting if some of these sovereigns now look to keep some of that gold supply in their own national borders? And maybe digitization of at least the ledger would help them achieve that goal.
This product obviously tied to gold. Are there plans to have a product with silver or platinum, palladium?
Interesting question. So we did actually launch a silver product about 8 months ago as well. So silver is alive and well on our platform, and we have customers that are actually buying silver digitally as well. Again, that silver is stored in a sovereign location and benefits from all the good principles that I mentioned earlier today.
So any up-and-coming projects you can tell us about them?
I can tell you there are some up-and-coming projects. I can tell you there are asset classes that are broader than just gold and silver. And interestingly, there are asset classes we're thinking about that are actually beyond precious metals because we think those asset classes can benefit from some of the same things that a digital ledger benefits gold for. Such as think about any, I'll put it this way, Daniela, right? Any financial instrument, call it a bank loan, call it a leveraged loan that has built up since the financial crisis, right? Think about an asset class that doesn't have central title records, like different loans that are not traded as securities. Think about purchasers like insurance companies that buy these instruments, but are not clear that they can actually sell them quickly if they needed to. So any markets that might sound like securities markets, but don't have the liquidity necessary yet and can benefit from ledger.
Fantastic. Michael Albanese, I wish you continued success.
Thank you.
And come back more often.
We'll do that.
I'd be happy to learn more. So Tradewinds, if someone wants to read up more and learn about the product,
Tradewindmarkets.com.
There you go.
And you'll find some good information there, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you for watching. We will have much more for you, so be sure to stay tuned to kitco.com.